Board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman True, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Triplett, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderman Wessels, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Florida, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Villa, Alderman Wessels, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Florida, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Cruzen, (15) present.
Quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers and the galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God. Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes, I'd like to recognize Al from Firefighters Local 73, and I also see David Holmes over there from the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters.
Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to have for my honored guest today, Ronnie Auer, who's also sitting over here.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 21st?
Yeah, I'd like to have as my special honored guest a young man over there, Mr. John Collins, a young activist in the community. Thank you.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th would like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, as we gather here on September 28th, which is National Ask a Stupid Question Day. I think that speaks for itself. And since no one else will claim him, I would like to have as my honor guest the one, the only, the man in blue, Mr. Gary Bess.
Welcome, Gary, welcome. Alderman from the 13th, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move for approval of the minutes from the September 14th meeting.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes.
Dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Alderman from the 21st, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move for perfection of Board Bill 108.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 21st, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Sure. So thank you, Mr. President. Board Bill 108 is the agreement to operate the O'Fallon Park Recreation Center. It's been the subject of much.
Do you have a floor substitute you want to introduce?
We do.
Okay.
So you want to do that first?
Yes, yes, and then you can do it all at once.
We have a floor substitute. I move that we adopt a floor substitute.
Moved by the Alderman from the 21st, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman, please proceed.
All right. After several weeks and a couple of months, actually, of negotiations and going back and forth between the parties, we worked out an agreement that actually ensures that low-income and especially children will be able to have access to this facility in North St. Louis. I want to thank all the parties for working and working on these agreements. Sometimes it did get a little heated, but that's sometimes how, as they say, the sausage is made in government. Yeah. Sometimes it ain't pretty. But as long as the end result is something that we can all be proud of, I'm happy that the process went like it did. So with that, I move for the, is there any more discussion? Or?
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I just ask Alderman from the 21st, maybe for the benefit of the readers at home, as I like to say, the details of the bill, because I think they may have changed.
Sure.
And I think it's beneficial just to highlight what's in the new package.
Sure.
Or will the Alderman from the 21st yield to that question?
Alderman from the 21st, will you yield for
yes.
the question?
Thank
Please
you.
proceed.
So the similarities of the agreements, the things that have not changed, is that the city has built a beautiful first-class facility in O'Fallon Park in North St. Louis. We are contracting with the YMCA to be the chief manager of that facility, and we have also agreed to have the Boys and Girls Club of St. Louis partner with the YMCA to offer youth services in that location. What's changed about the agreement, and this substitute includes, is a sharing of some of that subsidy that we're providing the YMCA. The YMCA will share some of that with the Boys and Girls Club to provide some of their services. And both the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA have agreed to each accept 650 kids at $25 per year memberships. That's around $2 a month that kids will be able to attend this facility. So that's a total of 1,300 kid memberships that we did not have before, and now we have. And in addition, the YMCA has agreed to include language in this agreement that provides for anyone making, as an individual or as a family, less than $32,000 a year, discounts ranging between 10% and 90% discounts. And the last thing is that we have changed the terms of the contract from a 10-year contract to a 5-year contract. That way it gives the community some input a little bit sooner in the process. So if there are some tweaks that we need to make, they can have an earlier opportunity to suggest those tweaks.
At the end of that 5-year period, we'd assume that we'd hope the YMCA will continue to operate the facility, but I guess the subsidy and the other details will be on the table again.
Right, and the way the subsidy is worded, it is up to $1.2 million, and it's based upon estimates of what the YMCA believes the number of memberships they may sell. We hope that they underestimated that based on the enthusiasm at some of the public meetings we've had in our neighborhood. I think we will exceed those projections, and hopefully by the time we renegotiate the contract in 5 years, we can lower the subsidy.
Yeah, thank you. I was lucky enough to see the interior of the facility this weekend. It's really a top-notch, I think, first-class facility, and I think it's going to be a great, really a wonderful amenity for the citizens of St. Louis. So I'm excited to see it opening in the near future. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 8th.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board.
Good morning.
Boy, it was a hot summer last year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the alderman from the 21st, I guess, thought it wasn't that hot because the alderman here just asked him, well, what were the 3 changes? He only came up with 3 changes in this bill. And they kept that facility closed during the summer. We just heard what he said the changes were, insignificant changes. And I'll go through some of the alderman's prior comments why O'Fallon wasn't open. You know, he just said, well, there's $1,325 passes for kids. Well, the original proposal provided for $650. Alderman, I do have the floor, and if you don't like what I say, you can jump up and grab that microphone.
Alderman from the 8th, you have to.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. And Alderman from the 21st, the Alderman from the 8th does have the floor. Both of you guys talked.
The original proposal, the YMCA was going to provide $650. The original proposal, I think the Boys and Girls Club had also put in that, a proposal to operate this. They lost that contract, didn't receive it. The Alderman in the American this week, he said, contends that the Boys and Girls Club should get a piece of the YMCA subsidy. I don't give out pieces of things. Okay, they didn't get the bid. I know they provide good services there. Getting a piece of the YMCA subsidy, was that worth keeping the facility closed all summer? I don't know. It's $100,000. Is it payola? I don't know. It could be payola. Over this process of time, they've come up now, the Boys and Girls Club will get another $650, $25 annual passes. I know that the one down in South City, which I've never been in that facility because it's too far from my house, they didn't get those things. They didn't get $650, $25 annual for the poor people in South St. Louis. They didn't get the extra $650 for the poor people in South St. Louis. And, Alderman, if you come down to South St. Louis, the poor people in South St. Louis are both black and white. And our poor people, we didn't get those extra things. We didn't get an extra payola to the Boys and Girls Club to run programs in South St. Louis.
Alderman from the 8th, you talk to me, not to him. And you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing is the Alderman from 21st stood up and said, well, we made these changes. These are 3 changes that denied the children the opportunity to use that facility last summer. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible that the Alderman from the 21st has held up this project for a long period of time. And he got up and he said, these 3 little things were what we negotiated out. We lowered from 10 years to 5 years the YMCA's contract. Those 3 things denied the kids that pool. It gave them an opportunity, though, during this process of time, slapping the mayor around, this whole period of time. When we know the $650 was in the original, the $650 at $25 was in the original request and proposal from the YMCA. I don't understand that style of politics. I don't know what else is in here. He just said the 3 little things, but this is a bigger package that was put on my desk than 3 little things. I don't know that we should pass it today because now it is not 100 degrees in St. Louis. It's a significantly different deal for the north side than it is in the south side. The subsidy's greater. The Antonio French $25 passes, there's a lot of them. I'd like to have a $25 pass, to the Carondelet Center to give away to the constituents in my ward. We don't have that. It's never been offered. It wasn't part of the original proposal. And then the same, and I know the Parks Commissioner had told us that, the discount, the sliding scale, the inability to pay, the diminished ability to pay is the same at both centers. And, I would think that that's fine. But it was a red herring issue. I don't think it was in the original bill that we had to have that actually in our bill when we started to try to accommodate the people that are less fortunate to participate in the Carondelet or to participate in the Wise greatly. So my question is, that I leave you, is why did we deny those kids the ability to use that pool. They could have opened it up earlier. The alderman will jump up here in a second and tell us, well, it wasn't ready, and we didn't have the contract, and all of these things. I know the Parks Department made that available. It was one hot summer for 3 things that don't make a lot of sense, to keep the pool closed on a 100-degree day for political reasons. You know, and it comes down to, you know, we got to save face today on this. You know, they put a lot of pressure on the mayor. It was a way better subsidy deal for the north side one, $1.1 million versus $700,000 for the south side rec center. They've given all of these extra benefits, and then we blame the mayor. We continue to blame the mayor until we can extort or make him look bad in this process. And in this process of politics, practice here, this type of extortion politics to make the mayor look bad denies those kids the use of the pool. The people in the community where that pool was supposed to serve should question their political leaders and find out, for these 3 little bitty things he just talked about, we denied those kids the use. And he stands here like a proud person and says, all those kids that sweated last summer, we got you something a little bit extra, when it was already there. I don't like that style of politics. I'm disappointed in the mayor. They have to keep going along playing that charade with the alderman from the 21st and then bending over to whatever final amount of extortion pressure gets put on the mayor. I am disappointed that the mayor succumbed. And I know that it's difficult for him because he is concerned about the schools. He is concerned that people judge this city on both sides, fairness, and whether or not this is fair because the dollar amounts are different. We have poor people, aldermen, in the south side. There are a lot of poor people that need recreational activities. We have a lot of that. I am a little disappointed in the mayor, especially when the alderman from the 21st says, well, we got these extra things. We gave the Boys and Girls Club should get a piece of the YMCA's subsidy. What is a piece of something? You know, that's what the, you know, mobsters, that's how they talk. Give me a little piece of that subsidy. We don't run government that way. I don't want to use any ethnic groups. We don't run government to extort the payola, get 100,000 here, get 650 French passes. You know, I wish I could get, you know, like 1/16th of the Conway passes to dole out and get some political favors from people in my ward. Nobody offered that to me. I'm just really disappointed up and down the line the way this process was. But most importantly, that pool could have been open instead of last summer when it was what I would believe, and I've told my son that, might not have been the hottest days I've ever experienced, but it was the longest period of time of that type of heat. And those kids didn't have access for these 3 grandiose things the alderman from the 21st just told us that he accomplished. Thank you.
Alderman from the 1st, the alderman from the 11th had been up, and I think he just took a minute's rest while the alderman from the 8th was wrapping up. So, alderman from the 11th, please proceed. Perfect, perfect. And then you're next. Alderman from the 11th, go, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. He can't yield to me unless he has the floor first. He's the boss. Troop knows that. Excuse me. The distinguished alderman from the 1st knows that. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to defend the mobsters here. Couple of things. We you know, this is a unique situation in that we've got a facility which is, in a word, wonderful. The Southside facility is located in the 11th Ward, I can safely say that, County Alderman from the 13th. Thank you. And it's probably the best thing that's happened to Cronlet, Holly Hills area in a long time. Having said that, of all the people I have to ride up the elevator with today, it's the Alderman from the 21st. I think we were making good sense and ran out of time. I would like to inquire the Alderman of the 21st, Mr. President.
Alderman from the 21st, will you yield for questions from the Alderman from the 11th?
Absolutely.
Alderman from the 11th, please proceed.
Thank you. There really isn't any new money in this, is there?
From the original agreement?
Yes.
No.
So it's the same kind of dilemma that we had in the Park Committee last July. And I guess my fear is that nothing has changed. The YMCA projects a loss of $1.2 million.
They say that they need $1.2 million subsidy to operate the facility.
Okay. And that's a big number, and you're saying you hope that you and your constituents, you can generate enough to make that work. And again, the facility that we have in Cronlet Park makes it just barely on the positive side. And again, we are more fortunate in that I think we probably have just more identifiable paying members just because we do. It's the nature of a city.
Sure.
Having said that, there's kids all over that need to recreate. There's people all over that need to exercise. So I'm torn on this only because of all the people that will make noise when we're doing the budget next time. I'm betting on you, right?
We definitely want to make sure that money is there.
Okay, so you just kind of tell me if we're, how much more beyond this particular lease will we have to come up every year to make this work?
So the way the contract is worded, it's up to $1.2 million in subsidy. So again, if the YMCA is successful in selling more memberships than they have conservatively estimated, then it will not go up to that amount, even in the first year. And so we hope that we do sell many more memberships in the first year than they expect. $700,000 of that subsidy is already worked into the original funding mechanism for this facility. It comes from the sales tax that voters approved. So it's a question of additional $500,000, and how much of that $500,000 we actually have to provide in the next fiscal year depends on the number of memberships we sell.
And can you straighten out for me, and I apologize my ignorance, straighten out for me the boys and girls clubs? Just give me a couple of them. Is this the one that we used to call, that's where I'm going with this?
The Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club, it was formerly known as.
Is that at Grand and Dotier?
Their main facility is at Grand. They renamed themselves just the Boys and Girls Club of Greater St. Louis because now they have multiple locations. So this would be basically an additional Boys and Girls location in O'Fallon Park. The YMCA has agreed to share a portion of that $1.2 million to fund the operations. The difference between the original agreement and the one that we have now is that the YMCA, when they submitted their response to the RFP, it was as a partnership between the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club. We were very excited about that because those are two of the premier brands in recreation services, with the YMCA specializing in adult services and the Boys and Girls Club specializing in youth services. So having those two operators in the same city facility was great to us. The problem that we reached was that there were no funds for the Boys and Girls Club operations. So they were pleased to be included and happy to be able to provide the services, but their board of directors made very clear that they could not do it for free, that there had to be some funds there for them to do what they're going to do. And so part of our fight was to make sure that there were funds written into the agreement that ensured that they would be successful at what they're trying to do for us.
Is the YMCA on the hook for a shortfall?
The YMCA...
Conceivably.
Yeah, so we have agreed up to 1.2, and that's it. So it's up to them if they sell even less memberships than they have conservatively estimated, but none of us believe that they're going to sell any less than they've estimated in this budget.
And is it fair to say that the YMCA's money is our money?
Yeah, and you know, and our main thing was not the size of the subsidy, but what we were getting for the subsidy. And for the $1.2 million, I feel very comfortable now being able to report to my constituents and all the citizens of the city of St. Louis that we can assure that people will be able to use this facility regardless of income, and that at least 1,300 kids will be able to use this facility every day. To keep that in perspective, the largest Boys and Girls Club, the Herbert Hoover one down at Grand, maximum members is 2,300. So we're talking about a facility almost as large, especially on if you talk about an average daily attendance, this would be an active Boys and Girls Club. So we're actually getting something tangible for our money.
Wow. Were you born when there was a ballpark there at Grand and Dodia?
No, I don't remember. I've seen pictures.
That's sad, isn't it? Some of us remember a ballpark at Grand and Dodia. Okay. Gentlemen, let me ask you a couple more questions, and I will sit down. Were there any other members of the Board of Aldermen involved in the negotiating team between you and Room 200?
Oh yes, absolutely. And I do want to give a lot of thanks to aldermen from the 18th Ward, the chairman of the caucus, Alderwoman Davis from the 19th was also involved. Several members were very active in...
She's at Starbucks this morning. Go ahead.
She deserves a break. She was very active with the Parks Director, and the 18th Ward Aldermen were very active with the administration. So it was a team effort. And all of us felt that we really needed to be able to ensure that everyone could use this facility regardless of income, especially because of the demographics of the location that this facility is being opened in.
And I think you told me coming up in the elevator, and maybe you didn't, but the terms of this lease are considerably shorter than the lease we had in the Parks Committee, correct?
Right. The original agreement was a 10-year agreement, and understandably, some people raised concerns about that because it potentially gave us a $5 million potentially unfunded liability. And so we agreed to push that back, both to satisfy some of the people who were concerned about the fiscal wisdom of that, but also to give the community an earlier opportunity to provide input. The one thing, too, I do want to correct. Facts never stop the alderman from the 8th from making a good argument, but let me correct something here. Is that under
You're correcting the alderman from the 8th?
From the 8th.
Just as long as that's clear. Thank you.
Is that we got this agreement, if you remember, we had our Parks Committee hearing in June. Under the terms of this agreement, then and now, the YMCA has asked for 90 days to open the facility. So even if we passed it on a fast track then, the facility would not be open this summer, would not be open now, and would not open until late October. So our fight has pushed the opening back from late October to late December. And frankly, if you're talking about early winter or late winter, I think this was a fight worth fighting, because now we ensure that at least 1,300 kids will be able to use that facility. And by the way, the Boys and Girls Club has agreed to take as many as they can get. They won't stop at the $650 because their model is the $25 membership. And also to correct an earlier statement is that the first agreement did not include $25 memberships. That is not the YMCA's normal model, and it is through this negotiations over the last 2 months that we got them to agree to those $25 annual memberships.
Okay. Yeah, and you're calling it a fight. I think we all realize that there's an awful lot going on, and facilities like this, we hope and pray to the Almighty that alleviates some of the, keep the kids busy. I don't think it's a fight. I mean, I voted no in the Parks Committee because I'm old and crabby. Now, having said that, if I'm the alderman from the, let me pick on somebody here that's been here a while. I'll pick on the alderman from the 7th. If I am the alderman from the 7th, and I'm not because she dresses funny, there is a Boys and Girls Club, I think, in my ward. And it's actually, Gene Slay is now deceased, but they do wonderful work. I buy an ad every year, and it's been around a long time. Should I be angry at the city because we are in fact subsidizing Herbert Hoover's from Grand and Dodier?
Absolutely not. What is important for everybody to keep in mind is that despite the location, this is a city facility. These discounts we negotiated are available to every city resident, every city kid. And if you are currently a member of a Boys and Girls Club affiliated with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater St. Louis, your $25 annual membership gets you access here, no matter where you live. You can use whatever Boys and Girls Club in that network. Same way, these discounts are available to any kid in the city for the YMCA that we negotiated. The discounts available for families between 10 and 90% are available to any family in the city of St. Louis. And we encourage and hope that what these deals and what this facility means is that people will come from all over the city and experience the beauty of O'Fallon Park, which is one of the largest parks and frankly, I think one of the most beautiful parks in the city.
You called them deals, I didn't. You just called them deals. No, I'm being a snot. Don't. So, I think I listened to your answer, but my fear is that we are setting a precedent whereby we're going to pick out on a Boys and Girls Club and in effect give them $100,000. And I think you and I both know with the budget constraints and the fiscal lament of the pensions that put a pall over everything we do, that doesn't bother you.
No, I think the unique nature of this situation is that it is a Boys and Girls Club and a YMCA operating in a city-owned facility. And so the city built the building, we own the building, we will continue to own the building, and we are providing a large subsidy to keep the building open and operated. So the $1.2 million represents 60% subsidy. And so our feeling was that if we're providing 60% of the subsidy, which is different than the south side, the Carondelet facility, our subsidy was never that high, and in this year it's zero. So for our $1.2 million, we wanted to be able to ensure that that was going to be, it wasn't going to be exclusive to just people who can afford it.
And again, I'm extremely familiar with the one in Carondelet Park, and we are, I think, going to get hurt by the fact that they're building a new facility. The gaming boat is building one right in Limay, I don't know, which is Limay's in Limay, Jefferson Barracks, and I think that facility is going to pull some of our membership away. Having said that, thank you. I appreciate the inquiry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Alderman from the 1st, you recognize.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. May I inquire the Alderman from the 8th, please?
Alderman from the 8th, will you yield for questioning to the Alderman from the 1st?
Absolutely.
Alderman from the 1st, please proceed.
Good morning, gentlemen. You indicated that the proposition that was negotiated in North St. Louis was something strange and something different, and you even went as far as to say that it might have been extortion. Did I hear you correctly?
Right. The thing is the Alderman from the 21st held this up, contrary to what the Parks Commissioner had previously indicated to us that they were prepared to have that open last summer, held it up. He got an extra 650 French passes for the kids from the Boys and Girls Club, and then got them an extra $100,000. And just a moment ago, he told the Alderman from the 11th that this is essentially the same bill that we had in front of us on July, one of the hottest days, hottest months ever. And held this up. The Parks Commissioner has represented, I think both in writing and verbally to all of us, that he would have had that operation open.
Okay, now, going back to the genesis of this, before the Alderman from the 21st Ward became a member of this board, it was my understanding that the blueprints, the plans, and everything was already in the process of being developed or had been developed for the center in South St. Louis. Is that correct?
I don't know, because I have nothing to do with that, because my issue with both of these facilities is I live in the middle of the city, and we can't really geographically avail ourselves easily to either of these facilities. I have nothing to do with the one down in Carondelet.
But
I never even have been inside of it. It's too far away from me.
Well,
I don't go that far south.
okay, the purpose of that was, gentlemen, we cut a deal.
Well, I don't do deals, Alderman.
When did you stop?
Well, you've never made a deal with me, a quid pro quo deal. I don't do deals. Well, I know what the language down here, I don't have that in my dictionary.
You pretend that you're pristine, but you're not. I mean, you do deals, and I've seen deals that you've done, some of which I approved of.
I mean, I will compromise occasionally.
Oh, you call it compromising. Okay, well, that's a good word.
On the budget, to get it done, I will do a compromise. But I don't do deals, and I don't speak in that language, and I don't give away freebies. I don't use that language. I don't use the language that the alderman uses to give a piece of the action. Give them a piece of that subsidy. I have no idea what that means.
But gentlemen, this is what it means.
Okay.
The pie is a public pie, right?
It's a what?
It's the public pie.
Pumpkin pie or public pie?
It's a public pie.
Okay.
As a public pie, where everybody's taxes and monies are involved, everybody have a right to a piece of the pie. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, well, good. Okay, now
and you know what? I've earned every piece of crumb I've ever gotten.
Okay, well, now we're talking about the city services.
Okay, then I'm
now,
listening.
You was complaining that your children in South St. Louis did not get the benefits of the reduced membership card and
no, we didn't get 1,300 French passes.
Okay, now in the beginning, let me refresh your memory. Okay. When we said, we're going to build a South Side facility, and this was the general conversation. And this South Side facility, the fee would be like $85 per month per member. And the excess money would help to build and support the facility in North St. Louis. Now that was the purpose, and that was the deal that was put on the table.
And that might have been
wait a minute, hold on.
That might have been the case.
It was the case. And so now what has happened, instead of the fee being $85 in South St. Louis, what is it? What is the fee in South St. Louis? $45? What is it?
I have no clue.
What is the fee? Does anybody know what the fee is in South St. Louis? That doesn't help me. You just told me your wife was a senior citizen. Anyway, that was the deal. And now what I see that happened in South St. Louis and North St. Louis, you remember when the Park Division closed up the facilities and they were saying that we're not going to open any of the centers and you have to have $10 for membership, or you have to pay $10 to have entry to those facilities. And the facilities sat there all over the city, and none of the kids went because they didn't have adequate funds to go. So they eliminated that process. Now, if you have children that meet the socioeconomic conditions in South St. Louis, which you do, and you all didn't see fit to negotiate a deal where those kids could have access to those facilities, then I think that's on your shoulder. And I think that you should have negotiated and made sure that poor kids would have access to those facilities. The whole purpose of building the facility was to have organized activities that would allow the kids that had no choice but to join these gangs and to pursue negative ventures, to get into something that was positive, that was constructive, that was meaningful, that would help improve their quality of life, their self-esteem, and more importantly, the self-love that a lot of our kids in the city of St. Louis, in both North and South St. Louis, really don't have. And I think that's reflected in the crime and health statistics of the children in this city, which is worse than most cities in the world, and in some cases it's third world. So I would think that you would be complimenting the effort to try to include kids in the process rather than beating up on them because you didn't do it. What I would expect you would do now is to go back and renegotiate the deal for the poor kids in South St. Louis so they don't have to go all the way across town in order to have access and affordable access to the South Side facility.
And to put it in historical perspective, two things. First of all, the YMCA has its sliding scale. Number two, when this first came up, I don't think you were down here when this first came up. I don't know, the alderwoman from the 6th Ward was here, but maybe the alderwoman from the 19th Ward, she wasn't here either. The problem that we have in the 6th, the 8th, and the 19th Ward, at that time we had, and I know that the alderman from 25th will disagree with me now, one of the highest concentration of children under the age of 15. And I'm looking at you old guys, because you're older than me, and the alderman from the Westfields is older than me. You old guys are sitting there.
I'm not older than you.
Okay. Fighting about one being north, one being south, and I'm saying it should be in the middle of the city because that's where the kids were, the greatest number of kids. And the kids from the 19th Ward and the 6th Ward, we got a long way to go to get to either of these two facilities.
And I agree with you. I don't disagree with
if you were here back then, I'm sure I barbecued the alderman from the 13th a little bit, and I don't remember who his co-sponsors were at that point in time, but my issue was at that point in time, it should have been in the middle of the city, or there should have been three. How do you provide access to the people who live in the Shaw or Botanical Heights neighborhood? How do we get there quickly if we're poor? We walk up to the Grand Bus. The bus is hardly damn even near run anymore here in the city of St. Louis. How do my people get there? How do my people go to Carondelet Park? Again, thank God, there is a Grand Bus still these days running. But we're in the middle, and the city's stretched real long and skinny there. Yeah, well, poor people don't have cars, Alderman. I got to take the damn bus.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr.
answer any other question you have.
Alderman from the 8th, I don't need to gavel you on that.
I'm done.
Yeah, but you know that how inappropriate that is.
Well, I was just hearing the noise come in my ear.
I know. I'm with you.
I thought it was the alderman of the 1st saying that.
Okay, I'm with you. Alderman from the 1st, please proceed. Please proceed.
In closing, Mr. President, it's very simple. I think if the deal, or however you want to call it, or the negotiations, that occurred relative to the North Side facility, brought about an environment where poor kids are guaranteed an opportunity and a right to visit and participate in the activities of those cities in the city, then I think the proper thing for us to do here is to make sure that all of the kids in the city has an equal opportunity to have equal access to the facilities in their area rather than beating up on the poor kids that have access in North St. Louis. What we should do and have the ability to do here today is to make sure that every child in the city that meets the socioeconomic poverty levels, federal poverty levels, family of four, have access to these facilities, both north and south. And I think that's a positive and a productive thing to do rather than sit up and beat up on the kids in North St. Louis that have access and complain about the kids in South St. Louis that don't have access, and then don't do anything to make sure that the kids in South St. Louis have equal access to those facilities. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, good morning. Thank you. I am a co-sponsor on this legislation because I support it. But I do want to reflect a little here. First of all, I belong to a group, and the first thing we ask in this group when we meet is, how are the children? And obviously, as long as we keep our eyes on that, and I know our colleagues down here are doing that, that's obviously the key. When we have our children in mind, and I have a lot of children in the 20th Ward, in fact, it's my understanding, and these things move, demographics change over time, but the latest census results indicate, for instance, that in Gravois Park neighborhood, that 35% of all African American males are under the age of 18. I'm not making it up. Those are the facts. And the map shows clearly that in Dutchtown, for all groups of children under the age of 17, that the 25th and the 20th wards have a large number of children. And we're not probably going to use the Carondelet YMCA unless we somehow get the transportation there, and we're probably not going to use the O'Fallon Park one, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an equivalent need for those children, because every child's life is important. But these aren't only for children, obviously. These facilities are also for adults and their families and their relatives and whatnot. Some years ago, Mayor Bosley suggested to a number of us that perhaps we ought to build some new facilities, bricks and mortar. And I think that he listened to us because some of us suggested that at that time we were most interested, as the alderman from the 1st Ward sort of alluded to, we were most interested in programming for all children throughout the entire city so that they would have access to that programming. By the way, I don't believe that the fact that we have 2 new facilities, great facilities in the city, precludes us, obviously, from all continuing to work together to make sure that all children throughout the city have that access to programming. We do have to work at that a little harder, and I suspect that we will continue to do that, and I hope that we will do that cooperatively. But I also understand that there's also some other goals here. One of the goals is, and I think this mayor looked at it, and aldermen on this floor have looked at it, and that is that we are we're competing essentially with other communities. We have a product to offer. Our product is, you know, our buildings, our people, our services, and all of those things. One of those services are some of the great recreational facilities that surround us, and so there were efforts then to try to replicate that at least within the city, and the hope was that we would retain families surrounding those facilities and attract families into the city as part of a larger package, obviously, of working on a whole lot of other things. Just so that it's clear, and I think that Gary Best, the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, has tried to clarify that for all of us, and that is that all residents in the city, based on income, if you make less than $31,000 on a sliding scale, can get a subsidy of between 10% and 90%. So the issue isn't so much with whether one can afford to get to enjoy those facilities. The issue would be transportation, and so we'll need to continue to look at that. And I agree with, I mean, everybody has said this: the alderman from the 8th, the alderman from the 21st, the alderman from the 11th, the alderman from the 1st. We've all sort of said we need to make sure that all of our children get access. The only thing is, I don't think that we're denying access simply because we have 2 great facilities. I think we would deny access if we say that we're finished, because we really, truly are not. Now, the $1.2 million subsidy is a huge subsidy. There was a pretty big subsidy on the one for Carondelet. Thankfully, because of the need and because all of us worked together to make sure everybody understood what was going on, that subsidy is no longer required. And so it's paying its own freight. And the hope is that we'll all work together to make sure that those who have that need will utilize the facilities at O'Fallon, and so therefore everything will work out great. So I think we're all sort of saying the same thing as long as we keep our eye on the fact that how are our children. And I applaud all of us who are struggling through this and hope that we will ultimately approve this board bill so that we take care of the peace within O'Fallon, and remember that then when I come up and others come up about how are our children, where there's a large group of children, that we will also address that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 12th year for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I think the one thing that we all can say is that we can all agree to disagree on a lot of things down here. You know, I applaud the alderman from the 21st. If I'm the alderman, I'm going to try to get what I can get to make things work, as well as me being the alderman from the 12th ward. I'm going to try to get things I need to work where I'm at. And, you know, the facility in Cronolette Park is a great facility, and it's used every day. There's plenty of people that go down there. And I think the bottom line is I think there'll be a big push to get families and children to use the Y in O'Fallon Park. And hopefully as time goes, that subsidy will go down. Well, maybe there won't be a subsidy. My personal feelings is, you know, it's all about kids and families wanting to enjoy themselves who cannot normally do that, take vacations and things like that. And it keeps the kids off the streets. I mean, let's face it, we got kids 9, 10 years old running streets, stealing, doing everything else. Now, maybe if they have something to do, maybe they change their mindset, and hopefully it does. But for me, the bottom line is it's all about the kids. You know, kids need something to do. And I think this will work out in the future. So I just want to say, you know, I hope everyone feels the same way. We're all going to have our difference of opinions, who gets what here, who gets what there. And it works both ways, let's be honest. You know, sometimes you get something, they say, aldermen will say, well, the south side got this, south side aldermen say, the north side got this. It's all about working together and helping each other out, and just keep in mind it's about the kids. I make decent money, and I can't afford to go to Y in Cronolette Park, so I understand, believe me. And that's the truth, Alderman. And just to let the alderman from the 8th Ward know, there's no mobsters in St. Louis. I'm living testament.
Alderman from the 13th, you rising for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I rise first of all in favor of the bill. I think it was, I think it's been repackaged in a way, as someone pointed out, there's no additional money in this than was available months ago. The you know, as far as the Cronolette facility, let me correct a few misconceptions. First of all, consultants were hired to determine where on the south side a facility should be. Alderman Matt Villa, who was the alderman at the time, he and I, neither of us wanted it in Cronolette Park. We did not, you know, it was kind of controversial for the folks that live there. A number of them didn't want a huge building, 12 or more acres with the parking lot taken out of the park. Of course, now that it's there, I would say opinions have changed. People almost universally like it. I think the folks that chose to locate it there were smart from an accessibility standpoint. For one thing, it's right off Highway 55, and for you know, it's a great marketing tool to be right there with all those cars passing by. And we depend upon not just city residents, but also some county residents using that facility. They pay more than the city residents do, but help make the, you know, make the revenue stream that we need to keep that facility open. Someone said facility got a big subsidy. Depends on what you think big is. The contract calls for $300,000 the first year, $200,000 the second, and $100,000 the third. You know, I think that was a minimal subsidy that was provided. The fees are a little less than YMCA fees. When I say a little, I mean, you know, maybe 5% or so less than YMCA fees, but the facility obviously is a lot better, a lot bigger, a lot, you know, a lot more expensive than a YMCA. So you're getting more, certainly getting more for your money at that facility. Fees haven't been raised for 3 years. That facility's been open 3 years in this next month, in November, I should say. Fees are the same as they were then. The fees are less than we pay for cable TV each month. In addition to that, the Y uses the same formula for financial assistance at the Cronolette facility that will be used at the O'Fallon facility. 10 to 15% of the folks that use the facility at Cronolette have some kind of financial assistance. It ranges from 10% of the stated monthly fees to 90%. So, and no one is denied accessibility. I think it's worked real well, again, we're at the break-even point. I hope we can, and I believe our next step is to generate some additional funds so that we can put some money into a reserve fund. So when that roof goes bad, or those machines need to be replaced, or the air conditioning needs to be replaced, we're not coming here to the Ways and Means Committee and trying to squirrel out a little money. We're going to have it, I hope we're going to have it in that reserve fund and be able to handle things without depending on the city general revenue funds, I should say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for the first time? Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I rise, of course, in support of this bill today, but I also wanted to, first of all, give some recognition to the Y and the Boys and Girls Club for being a part of our scenario of how we get things done, most especially as much media attention as you do get with various things that happen here. All of their intentions, I'm sure, were good. I know that when we look back on this, we will realize in the next year or two that the operation of the facility will be done well, the population will be sustainable, we'll have more children than ever off of the streets and gaining many, many, many different kinds of assistance, not just having a recreational experience, but also working with facilities like the Boys and Girls Clubs that offer character building and everything else, and also additional services like eye exams, dental exams, and everything else. So it's a whole lot more than what's been talked about. But one of the things I found out in this process, which most people know I don't have a lot of patience for nonsense, is that somewhere along the line, we've got to decide that we're going to be really about true business. And I know that we are elected, and the name of the game is to make ourselves look the best we can in any process, but it should also be about business. So I know that when I talk to people, that's what I try to do. I try to be about the business. I try to make sure that we expedite the processes and that we get things done in the best interest of the city as a whole. Gary Best, who has been around for a long time, Gary and I have been around a very, very long time. I didn't understand what he was doing to hold this up. And I can get you quietly and let you know that I don't like things like that. But I do know that he worked very hard on this, and he was very accommodating. And I can look back in the process and see that there was always an intention for funds to go to the Boys and Girls Club. There was always an intention to have some additional slots made available. So everybody probably is right to some small degree in what they've been saying. And everybody has a right to want to say, I made it happen. But I know how I feel about this. We could have done a little bit better. We could have been a little bit cleaner in all of this. But above and beyond anything else, the youth that are dying every day on our streets, the families that are shortchanged because they don't have the ability to go and learn about the resources that can help them have a better quality of life, they don't have as much time as we have taken to get this done, to change things. And it's somewhere along the line, I'm hoping and praying that we do better. I go out of my way to help everybody. I don't care what ward it is, because we need to have this city shown in a different light. And if you haven't been dealing with numbers and you don't know what the census says and you're not paying attention to all of this city, which I knew this 10 years ago, actually 15 years ago, we are not having as many babies in North St. Louis. If you notice this last census, we hadn't had as many babies. That's why we knew we needed to close schools, because the numbers were not there, most especially in North St. Louis. The numbers were not there. Those are quiet, retired bedroom communities. So you got a whole lot of things that you need to consider, like how are we going to get these kids transported over there to that O'Fallon Rec Center? Because they can't walk and they don't have bus fare. So all of that should have been a part of the consideration. And I want to still talk about it after we pass this bill, because we got to make it right in its totality. We got to make it right. And nobody else has said anything about any of those things, but all of that has to be considered later on. But I just really wish that at some point it could be about the business instead of the unnecessary politics. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 17th, you were up, and then you next, and then we're going to go to the Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is one of those floor debates where you sit back and you listen, and I think I agreed with almost everybody that spoke this morning. And I respect almost all of their viewpoints. As chairman of the Parks Committee, we took this bill up in June before the session went out. Was it June or July before the session went out? We were, I guess, learned about it or addressed it in the last waning moments of the last session, and so we were kind of felt we were under the gun. I know, at least I can speak for myself, I felt I was under the gun. And I had reservations about voting for it. It wasn't that we didn't want it opened or anything. It was the money stuff. Forgive me, I'm a money guy, and that's what I do for a living, so I think a lot about money. It wasn't that I was opposed to anything that was going on. I was just concerned about the money, and we had very little time to think about it. We ultimately left it out of the committee because we felt that, I felt that again, I got to speak for myself, I didn't feel like I wanted to be in a position of stopping a brand new rec center from opening up after we've spent so much money on it. So I believe I voted present at that meeting, and it's been from somewhat of afar that I've been reading about this in the paper and so forth. And if I could share, correct the alderman from the 20th, one comment he said regarding the money, and I reflect back on this whole situation, and I'm not being critical of anybody else, perhaps of myself. I voted for this original legislation, and I guess I think I probably miscalculated. I was under the impression that when you build a rec center, or maybe I didn't look at the details of it enough, but I had an idea of, a swimming pool where kids would pay 50 cents and go in and swim for the day, and it'd be a very modest type of thing. And that's kind of my vision of what a rec center was going to be, and it was going to be somewhat inexpensive and available to kids. And the notion that we were spending this money on doing a really high-end type of center that was going to charge fees, that kind of, did a wake-up call for me when, frankly, when the Cronolette Center came in. a couple years ago. And again, I'm not blaming anybody. I voted for it, and I'm sure it was in the details. I just didn't look at the details. It's just that it was kind of a wake-up call for me that we were doing that, because I had an idea that this is going to be for, you know, just anybody who needed to use it. And that's kind of how I remember rec centers when I was a kid. And so we got the Carondelet one opened, and you know, I think it went fairly well. It has gone very well. And evidently people weren't shy about the fees. We have a new center open up, and are soon to open up, and all of a sudden we found out, and I found out that morning, or maybe the previous couple days, that there was a miscalculation, that the estimate of the cost to subsidize the center was going to be quite a bit more than the one in Carondelet, and we didn't know where the money was going to come from. We knew for this first year, but in future years we didn't. And further, and this is where I'd like to correct the alderman from the 20th, is there is no identified source of kind of replacement reserves for either of the centers. And at committee, at least that morning, they talked about each of them needing $500,000 a year that should begin putting aside in escrow. So all of a sudden, something that was, you know, kind of presented to us as kind of a zero-cost thing is suddenly, you know, $1.5 million over budget. And you know, that was like, holy smoke, out of the blue, where's that going to come from? And I guess that altered, I guess, my understanding or view of what we were trying to do. And actually, my understanding, which was to provide low-cost rec centers to kids, you know, to our city's youth, that in some respects might actually get hurt as a result of this thing, because when we start looking around to go ahead and plug that $1.5 million gap, I'm afraid they're going to come back to the rec departments and all the little small rec centers that aren't as fancy as these, you know, the ones that have a gymnasium and maybe a weight room and, you know, no swimming pool, no fancy slides, all of those things that are kind of scattered around the city might end up actually getting hurt in some way, shape, or form to make these two rec centers that are largely designed to be, you know, kind of for a paying public as opposed to people without resources. And that was my concern. And as we go forward, trying to plug that $1.5 million gap, you know, is high on my mind and where that's going to come from. And now I'm going to go ahead and sound a little selfish, because some of what the alderman from the 8th, I said I almost agree with what everybody says. The 17th ward's next to the 8th. Residents from my ward are going to have a difficult time getting to either of those rec centers. I have a small rec center. I'm very fortunate. I have some large organizations that support a rec center in my ward. I use some of my block grant monies to supplement that to make it available. It's not a big fancy rec center. It's got a gymnasium, it's got a weight room and an exercise room and a few lockers, and it's attached to a school. But Herbert Hoover runs that for us. And the question is are they going to come back and ask me for my block grant money that I'm using in my ward to go ahead and subsidize what's going on in the 21st ward? Or are they going to come back, or even in the Carondelet Park Center? I don't want to pick on either one of them. Are they going to come back? And we just did this bond issue for the parks and all that stuff. We depleted that account. Are they going to come back and try to take what little money we left in the parks budget to do infrastructure type of stuff and now start spending that on programming? And I would like to at least had some sort of understanding or framework where the future funding of these two centers were going to come from. And, you know, I'm for this today. They know how to fund it today. That's a bridge that we can cross tomorrow. But, you know, when that starts, that discussion next year starts, I'm telling everybody I'm going to have a problem if they start trying to take my block grant money that I'm using to fund my rec center in my ward to go ahead and fund a rec center, you know, one of these lavish new rec centers that my kids can't get to. And the same thing with some of the parks budget. I think there's a need there, and I want to be reasonable, but please, let's not go ahead and you know, cannibalize all the other programs we have to make these two new rec centers. You know, in retrospect, if I want to be self-critical, I personally believe that we developed a bit of a champagne appetite in developing these things, and you know, I voted for them, so I'm not complaining about anybody else. But I think that we probably overdid it with these things, and that money might better well have been spent in smaller, more economically, more geographically diverse centers that would have served the true needy in our city. But that's all hindsight, and Monday morning quarterbacking is easy for all of us to do. That's my remarks.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. About 2 years ago, we cut a deal with someone in the city, some parts of the city, about our recreation center at Tandy Park. Tandy Park is a beautiful facility exterior. We had about $1.5 million to fix that facility up. Now that facility is still dusty. I have the same urinals and the same sinks from the time that center was built. Rust is pouring out of the overflow valves of the sinks. The urinals are down on the floor. It smells horrifying. It's horrible the way they smell. There are no doors on the stall. There are no seats on the stools at all in Tandy Park. Again, the comparison is to the Flintstones compared to the Jetsons. I get up and talk about, and next week I'm gonna bring some pictures. You know I will bring pictures in about what's going on in the 4th Ward. It's horrible. I'm in favor of the bill of the 21st Ward. I'll say to my colleague, I'm gonna bus all my kids over to your ward until we get my ward straight with this facility, because it is hideous in there. When they put the air conditioning units in, I did a walkthrough with Dan Skillman and the rest of them, and the dust. I have the COPD, I cannot even walk in the building. Dust is everywhere, and they got angry because I brought that to their attention, the contractors did, about just dusting the place off. I mean, there's white dust on everything. You can't even see the furniture is the color of the podium, the color of my desk, but it's white throughout the entire building. And I'm saying that we need the same thing, and I'm like Joe. I use block grant funding on this, and if they come at it, my money about with this $1.5 million or whatever, I'm going to be an angry man, because the 4th Ward needs a recreation center, a facility nice, neat, and clean for our children. Otherwise, we're going to have going to get 2 of them big yellow buses, and I'm going to bus them over there to the 21st Ward until we get ours done. But I need my work done that was promised to me 2 years ago in this ward, and we're tired of living in this type of condition. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for the first time? We have the Alderman from the 20th, has been up for a while. Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I guess the easiest thing would be for us to build a rec center in Midtown, and it was eliminate all these problems. So if we could add this to this bill today, I think solve everything. First of all, I'd like to thank my special guest, Gary Best, for all his hard work and patience and time in putting this thing together and working with us. And I think the most important thing is probably to get this place going up and running. But I just like to make sure that these two, and when we do open the one in Midtown, that this is not like a late night commercial where the offer is not available at all locations. So let's make sure that we do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 22nd.
Good morning. Thanks, Mr. President, members of the board. I just remember several years ago in the planning stages when we were talking about recreation centers such as this in the city of St. Louis as a whole, one north, one south, and one central. And what I remember coming out of that is from a funding standpoint, we couldn't afford to do one in the central corridor. And we were left with, let's do one in south and let's do one in north. And unfortunately, what appears to the public is that there's a South Side Recreation Center for Southsiders. There's now a North Side Recreation Center for Northsiders, and I'm a little disconnected from that thought, because it was my understanding that subsidies would be provided when they do build the O'Fallon Recreation Center. However, you can go to either rec center. But in this bill, I see in the fee schedule that if you're Metro, if you get a Metro membership, then you can, of course, go to either facility. And I'm not sure if that's fair. It's public funded. personally, I think we should have the option of going wherever we want to go, and I think that would eliminate some of the black and white issue with this. Also, I have a question about the 650 membership. So I'm going to ask if the Alderman from the 21st Ward would yield for a question just on that point.
Alderman from the 21st, will you yield for questions to the Alderman from the 22nd?
Yes.
Alderman from the 22nd, please
Yeah,
proceed.
Alderman, the question relates to the 650 memberships. Are those memberships that the youth can go to either the Crondelet Recreation Center or the North Side, or is it just isolated to the North Side?
So for the 600, there are 1,300 total, 650 through the Boys and Girls Club and 650 through the YMCA. For the 650 for the Boys and Girls Club, they can go to any Boys and Girls Club. The YMCA has limited access to just this facility for this, because again, this is not their normal model. So this is just for that facility. One thing too, though, there is a special arrangement with the Monsanto YMCA. And I think it is a $4 upcharge where the members of the Monsanto Y can also use this facility.
Okay. Those are my only comments and questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 24th, you're recognized, and thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I was a young lad, which gets harder to remember with each passing day, I didn't live too far from a community center. When I was a kid, my parents sent me there to swimming lessons, which I hated because the pool is about 45 degrees all year long. So they told me, when you are able to swim to the end of the pool and back, you can stop going to swimming lessons. And I did that pretty quickly, and then I started ice skating, and it's even colder on the ice skating rink. And then I learned in the gym to play point guard, and you can see, given my stature, how that worked out in the long run. But the point is, as a kid, there was a bunch of stuff to do there. And looking back, I'm sure I took it for granted. I have no idea what it cost, if it cost a single dime for membership. I don't know. But I do know that a lot of times we go through the budget and we spend a lot of money, and a lot of times they are just expenditures. They are not investments. And what is great about today, all the stuff we've been talking about, is that I think today we're actually making an investment. And I think it's a much needed investment. And I think that, the perfect is not the enemy of the good. And I think we've got a very good program, and I really, I had absolutely nothing to do with it, but I commend the people who envisioned this at the beginning, the people who have seen it through, the Parks Department, the YMCA, who's extremely qualified to manage this facility, and the folks who have really paid attention to making sure that we're gonna make sure that the kids like me, when I was a kid, I don't know what it cost, but we're making sure those same kids today have access to the facility. It would be a real shame to spend $22 million to get the lights on in this place, and the kids who want to be there, who need to be there, can't use it. So I think when we walk out of here today, everybody who participated in this should feel good, should feel proud. Good decisions have been made along the way, and I think this is going to be a big success, and whatever debate there is today, I think is going to fade away when we see that what has been brought to the table is working. So I urge the sponsor of the bill to renew his motion, and let's vote this thing out. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 8th, you recognize?
Yes, and just to point out that all of those young activities that contribute to the success of Alderman Ogilvie, and he was named the best local politician in the St. Louis area by the RFT, just for all of you colleagues. And I know this fellow over here was a couple of years ago, and somehow I told the...
You were too, weren't you?
I was it last year, so I do want to acknowledge, and I think the Alderman from the 21st had acknowledged me at some point in time for that. The issue at hand, we would go back one more time, and I will also tell you the Alderman from the 16th Ward, a number of years ago, we're in the middle of the city, we had no pool. I paid the one year, the non-citizen rate to go to Maplewood because the Maplewood pool was closer to my house and easier to get to. And in 1 year, she managed to finagle in to get a Maplewood resident rate for her constituents, and I got browbeat by my constituents. And Still to this day, many of my constituents pay the high rate. They no longer get the Maplewood resident rate to go to Maplewood because it's way more accessible. And it's awful damn expensive. Alderwoman, I don't know what it was, but at the end, I think it was going to be $285 just for the summer, and that was 5 or 6 years ago when my son was younger. But I come back to the point at hand and where we started this morning. My issues today is the alderman from the 21st, in responding to the alderman of the 11th inquiry, said it's essentially the same bill as it was in July. And those kids didn't have use of the facility. He did get, the 650 French passes somehow, and I'm sure they'll get distributed in his ward or wherever the case. Put Conway on that particular thing. And the issue is, and it would be disingenuous and less than honest to say that the city wasn't ready to open that pool this summer. And this all came down to politics. It is unfortunate that we got a beef with the mayor. We'll abuse the kids. We got the beef with the mayor. We'll abuse the seniors. We got the beef with the mayor. We'll just hold it up, extort, whatever, make the mayor look bad, and our kids don't get to use the pool all summer, or at least from July on. And that's where I started, because I understand. I paid the full blow to go to Maplewood, how important it is to have access to these facilities. And we had the opportunity to do it in July. 3 times this morning he has said this essentially is the same bill, and why weren't those kids there in July? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from 13th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As far as I'm concerned, the mayor did an excellent job, negotiated a good package, and I think he deserves credit for that. There was a compromise reached. There was no additional money put on the table from 6 months ago. And so I compliment him and Gary Best for doing that and making it happen. We had one alderman said he thought it was going to be like 50 cents to go to the pool during the summer on a daily basis, and there would be very, very few charges. On the other hand, he said he's worried about the subsidy that may have to be paid out of these 2 facilities. Well, there are no free lunches. I mean, either you're going to generate fees at both of these facilities at a certain level, or are you going to pay, a big subsidy? I mean, it costs $2.8 million a year to operate the Cronlet facility. If we had no charges at all, we would have to come up with another $2.8 million out of general revenue. And we'd have a similar number. I think the current budget estimate at O'Fallon is 2.1, but I guarantee you it's going to go up. Because it was the same when it was a low figure too when we opened at Crondelet. So between the 2 of them anyway, we'd have $4.9 million in general revenue costs if there were no fees. So, we either have to have one or the other. So this stuff about, gee, it would be great to have people pay nothing, it would be. But then the taxpayer would have to make it up out of general revenue. So, I say, let's get real, folks. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 21st, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I just wanted to close by saying a couple things. This fight has always been about making sure that this facility not only opens and opens, as we know, it was going to be a beautiful, successful project. The YMCA is an awesome partner to have. And I want to thank the YMCA, the folks from the Boys and Girls Club, the Parks Director, folks in the Mayor's office, and especially the aldermen down here who helped negotiate this deal. All of us wanted the best for this facility. I have no doubt that the Parks Director and Mayor wanted to see this place open, that the YMCA wants to do the best job possible to make it a successful project. we all have different responsibilities at that table. My responsibility, I felt, was to make sure that everybody in our community had access to this facility. Not only that we just open it, and it's great for those that can use it, but I had a nightmare. I had a nightmare that woke me up one night, that we were going to build this great facility, and I saw little children with their faces pressed up against the window, looking at other kids in there using the pool, and they can't use it because they couldn't afford the $45 per month fee. $45 is no insignificant amount. We have a city with very, very many low-income people, and for those folks, $45 a month is a significant amount of money. And so getting these agreements in place now that guarantees at least 1,300 kids the opportunity for the next 4 or 5 years to be able to spend their after schools in a facility like this, receiving programming from both the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club, instead of hanging out on the street, instead of learning the fine art of carjacking or violence, that to me was worth the fight. And so I appreciate everybody that helped make this happen. I think it's a successful project that we can all feel proud of. And with that, I renew my motion.
Would you like to make a motion to perfect the floor substitute?
I move that we perfect the floor substitute for Board Bill 108.
Moved by the Alderman from the 21st, seconded by the Alderman from the 24th. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll dispense with line items 9 and 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 172, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvie, Cone, and French. Ordinance amending section of Ordinance 68934, establishing a policy for the disclosure of potential conflicts of interest and substantial interest for certain municipal officials and containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 173, sponsored by Alderman Wessels, an ordinance pertaining to the allocation and approval of public funds, amending Section 1 of Ordinance 67794 pertaining to providing for the annual allocation of $1 million for crime prevention programs and requiring the affirmative vote of a majority of all members of the Board of Aldermen, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 174, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel on an irregular portion of Olive Street adjacent to City Blocks 1042 West and 1057 and adjacent to 3411 Olive. Board Bill 175, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to vacate travel on the irregular shaped excess portion of 7th Street beginning at Sear Street. Board Bill 176, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to vacate travel on an irregular portion of 14th Street beginning at Lafayette, Soulard Street between 13th Street and 14th Street. Board Bill 177, sponsored by Alderman Troop, an ordinance providing for the unconditional vacation and abolition of a public right-of-way in a portion of the east-west alley in City Block 4380 East is bounded by Penrose Park, Euclid Avenue, Penrose, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 178, sponsored by Alderwoman Flowers, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 5200 through 40 North 2nd Street. Board Bill 179, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance pertaining to the Excise Code, containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 180, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert Airport News, Gift, and Specialty Retail Concession Agreement between the City and HG St. Louis JV, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 181, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance amending Ordinance 66729 by modifying the terms of a real estate tax abatement for the 2626, 2632, and 2634 Wyoming Street redevelopment area. That's the extent of our first readings.
Reference to committee.
To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 179. To the Legislation Committee, Board Bill 172. To the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, Board Bill 173. To the Streets Committee, Board Bills 174, 175, 176, and 177. To the Housing Committee, Board Bill 181. And to the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bill 178. And to the Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bill 180. That's the extent of reference to committees.
Second reading.
The following board bills were reported out of the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 88, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderman Carter and Schmidt, an ordinance adopting the Uniform Plumbing Code for 2009 edition as the Plumbing Code of the City. Board Bill 168, sponsored by Alderman Schmidt, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Public Safety to enter into and execute a grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance to fund the Justice Assistance Grant Program. That's the extent of second readings.
Dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 124, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2416 McNair containing a severability clause. Board Bill 125, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3224 through 26 Michigan containing a severability clause. Board Bill 126, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3927 through 3929 Shenandoah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 127, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3661 Shenandoah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 130, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3953 through 65 Laclede containing a severability clause. Board Bill 131, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4401 through 55 Shoto containing a severability clause. Board Bill 134, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 1300 through 04 Dolman containing a severability clause. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 13th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move for perfection of the aforementioned bills on the consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Dispense with line items 16 through 19. I move for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from 26. It's been a request by the Alderman from the 12th that resolution number 135 be made in bank. I make a motion that we make courtesy resolution 135 in bank. I'll entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please change resolution 135 and make note that that resolution now is in bank.
So noted.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt our courtesy resolution calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries.
That's the extent of courtesy resolutions.
We will dispense with line items 21 and 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, Ways and Means Committee meeting, 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Thursday, Transportation and Commerce Committee meeting, 1 p.m. in the Leisure Room. Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers. That's the extent of my announcements.
Alderman from the 20th, you recognize.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, we will be having a Public Safety Committee meeting on Wednesday, October 3rd at 1:30 p.m.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
So noted.
Alderman from 3rd, you recognize.
Mr. President, members of the board, we're going to have a streets meeting on Thursday, 11 a.m. Board Bill 34 is going to be heard, and if any other alderman has a bill that they would like heard, please tell the clerk.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Any further? Alderwoman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I would like to let people know that this Sunday is Art in the Park. Art in the Park is held in Francis Park. Francis Park is run and the money raised by the neighborhood. They raise an average of $50,000 a year for Francis Park, so please come on down to Francis Park, 11A to 6P this Sunday. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to invite everybody to the St. James the Greater Homecoming that starts tonight and continues tomorrow, beginning with the parade at 11 a.m. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 19th.
Mr. President, members of the board. First, I want to share with you that Starbucks opened this morning at Grand and 40 and Old Del Taco. And we'll have a second opening there probably in the next 60 days. There will be a Chipotle restaurant there as well. But I wanted to invite everybody to Kena Plaza at 4:30 today. St. Louis Community Colleges is having a rally there. They're trying to get young people to commit to the challenge of completing their education. There'll be a lot of resource information there. So I'm hoping that those who are interested in furthering their education show up. I want to remind my residents to come to our public safety meeting tomorrow morning. That's Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Harrison Community College Center. We're also, Grand Center is having Dancing in the Street tomorrow at Grand and Washington. That starts at 1 o'clock.
Some order.
And I want to give a shout out to Harris Stowe and SLU for their homecoming. SLU's is tomorrow, and so I'm sure the kids will have a lot of fun on campus. Thank you.
All right, any further? Alderman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to announce that tomorrow is our 4th annual Bait and Taste. We have a parade that will begin from the Halls Ferry Circle to Broadway and end at Hickey Park and begin at 10 a.m. We have a live stage all day from hip hop to blues to a little mild rap and R&B, and we'll have a petting zoo, we have food, we have the police helicopters coming back and the whole SWAT teams in the parade and horses and dogs and all that stuff. So tomorrow, I see the forecast is clouds, but sun, no rain, because Live on the Rocks got rained out. So looking forward to it. I know our president's supposed to be in the parade and other elected officials. So if you don't want to be downtown, because you don't have any parking, come on up North St. Louis to Hickey Park and experience Bait and Taste. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've been there, and it is a great parade. So if you get a chance, get out to Bait and Taste this weekend. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from 13th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to excuse the alderman from the 14th Ward due to necessary absence.
Moved by the Alderman from 13th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from 11th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 13th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adjourn the meeting until Friday, 10 a.m., October 5th. Moved
by the Alderman from 13th, seconded by the Alderman from 11th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.